Welcome to the On Stage podcast, where we interview musicians and members of the entertainment community. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the On Stage podcast. We have Jennifer Alvarado, an international recording artist from VALE, North Carolina, and she has amassed over 1 million streams on Spotify alone. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast. So nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Every recording artist either has an instrument of some form on their wall or a guitar. But you have an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar on your wall, and then you have a keyboard. Are you considered a multi-instrumentalist as well?
I do play multiple instruments. I would say guitar is my go-to. It's what I use the most. But yeah, I do write a lot on piano and keys. I grew up playing mandolin, and I've taught ukulele. I've played bass. So yeah.
That's awesome. So everyone, Jennifer has an EP project titled Playing with Fire, which was released in April 2021. And she released a country pop EP titled Songbird Part 1 in July 2022, and just released Songbird Part 2 in July 2023. So we will put that in the bottom in the description. Could you give us a little bit of background of who Jennifer Alvarado is and what made you want to keep on the path of musicianship?
Yeah, so I've been doing music since I was little. I think music just kind of found me, which I think most musicians and singers can say that. It's just always been there. It's always been something I did. I grew up writing a lot. I loved writing short stories, and then those short stories, became songs and made up songs and stuff like that. And then started singing, then picked up instruments, and it just kind of has progressed. And honestly, there's been times in my life where I've kind of tried to put it to the side, because growing up, I grew up an only child. I am an only child, and my parents were very practical, and they were very much like, yeah, it's great. You can do music on the side, but like, you've got to go get an actual job, and you need to go do this. And I think for a long time, that's what I tried to do. But I always knew that music was where my heart was. And so even when I tried to put it in the background, like it just came back in full force. So yeah, so spent a lot of years just kind of trying to perfect what I was doing, and then also try to run from what I was doing as far as with music. And then it just kind of circled back. And so July of 2021, I kind of stopped running from doing this full time and just jumped full into it and said, okay, let's see what's happening. So before then, I was doing a lot of music ministry with church. And so I actually was a worship leader, and I'm a worship pastor. And so that's sort of what my focus was. I was doing full-time music, but it was different, if that makes sense. It wasn't touring. It wasn't releasing songs all the time. So I started doing that July 2021, and just made a commitment to myself to see this through and see what was happening.
And you mentioned worship leader at your church.
Mm-hmm.
So can you explain how that happened? And I don't think you've actually left that position. You're still doing it. You're just doing other things on the side.
Yes. So I guess the first involvement I got with church was church choir. And that was when I was like 6 or 7 years old. And, but then when I was about 15, I started actually leading worship at church. And so there was a contemporary group at church, and I actually kind of founded a couple other groups and started working on that. Did that off and on through college and stuff like that. And then ended up the worship leader of the contemporary service left one day, and I had been helping. And so all of a sudden I was the leader. It just kind of was there, and was actually doing worship for 2 different churches, and ended up leaving one of them and going kind of full time into another church and leading at several of the campuses. And so just really that was my focus. That's what I thought I was going to be doing. I was doing contemporary Christian music. That was actually the very first album I put out in 2015 was my originals from contemporary Christian. But there was a disconnect from the standpoint of I never wanted to use that position and that platform to try to push my music. And so it was something I kind of did in the background. So I never pushed it. I never really said, like, people knew I'd released an album, but I never really pursued it. And so then, focused on that, focused on becoming a worship pastor, because that was really what was on my heart and still is very big. Like, that's my faith is the number one thing for me. And if at the end of the day I had to choose, like, I'm going to choose my faith every time. Um, but luckily, like, God's opened that door to be able to still do this and be able to actually go on the road and pursue the other stuff too. But I actually was very highly involved with a Celebrate Recovery Ministry, which I don't know if you know what that is, but it's basically like a 12-step program. The difference is instead of AA and NA, the focus is the higher power is Jesus Christ and what that centering of that focus of biblical principles can actually do for you. So I was involved with that for 10 plus years, was the worship leader for that. And that still is very much my heart and what I love.
Praise the Lord. Do you really think that good music and great music and worship music has to have the word God, Jesus, worship, the Son of God? Because I've heard some really good Christian music that don't have any of that in there, but it still makes you want to worship the Lord. For instance, my favorite, Wayne Watson. Sometimes Michael
Mm-hmm.
W. Smith doesn't have any in it. Um, so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think that it has to be spelled out in that way. I think it's honestly in the same regard, people worship different ways. Somebody might worship in a church setting, other people might want to go out in wilderness. And so I think it's the same kind of thing. I think that if you are worshiping correctly, you can see God in anything. And that should be what we aim to do, is be able to see God's working in every little thing. Actually, one of the contemporary services that one of the churches that I first started leading at, we would start service with like a top 40 song. So we would start with something like Bonnie Raitt's Something to Talk About or something like that, just so that during the week, most of the people were not listening to Christian radio. And so it would be that reminder that, hey, God's anywhere. God's still with you. Like, yeah, you're listening to this song on top 40, but he's still there. He's still, in the car with you. And so I think that was a huge help to me early on, that of getting away from like the four walls of the church and realize that like the church is in us. Like, we are the church. We're supposed to go out beyond those walls and reach the lost. And, they're outside the church. They're not coming in the door of the church. So that was just a huge eye opener for me early on in ministry.
Were you the type of child that I was just discussing this yesterday? Were you the type of child that would run around singing worship to the Lord, singing Christian songs? Or would you sing like Mary Had a Little Lamb while you're playing skipping stones and playing in the mud?
I was the type of child that was probably singing like Whitney Houston, Journey. Like, I was singing probably anything but Mary Had a Little Lamb. I mean, I remember learning those songs when I was super young. No, I was singing stuff from the radio, like, and probably things I shouldn't have been singing and didn't know any better. But to me, like, I can remember being on the back lots of my grandmother's house. And I remember when I was like 7 years old, just walking on those back lots by myself and, singing and writing. I would be writing little songs and stuff like that. but I was also talking to God. And I can remember talking to God and being like, I just remember knowing that like I was supposed to do more with my life and feeling like I was supposed to do more, but I didn't know what that meant. Like, you don't know what that means at 7. Um, but I always had that connection. And so for me, music has always been that bridge. Like, it's always helped me feel closer to God. And it didn't matter what I was singing. Now, obviously, like, some things aren't going to make you feel closer to God. But no, for me, music in general was a gift. And so I always have looked at it like that.
Well, I guess asking you if the first song you started playing the guitar was Thunderstruck or Smoke on the Water. What's the first song that you learned on the guitar?
I want to say it was like Third Eye Blind.
Nice.
No, well, was it? Let me. No, I think it was Wonderwall. Honestly, I think it was Wonderwall.
Oasis.
Yeah, yeah, it was Oasis. I'm pretty sure it was Wonderwall by Oasis. And then, like, I remember playing. Like, I would hear things when I was little. Like, I started playing kind of by ear and picking out notes and stuff. And so I remember like Little Texas, what might have been, was like the first song that I sat there and figured out like all the notes for, like the melody line. So
How do you feel when you pick up the guitar and you start playing it? Does music kind of, I don't want to say possess you, but does it make you like, you feel like you're in the front of the courts of the Lord playing guitar and singing for Him? How does it make you feel when you're playing?
I love listening to music, but no, it's not the same. It's not the same when, especially like if I'm watching, from the audience or whatever. Like it's still. I kind of look at it when I'm in the audience. I look at it as like I'm in class and I'm studying something, if that makes sense. I study everything that's going on. And so it's very hard for me to not just sit there and take mental notes of everything happening and like, oh, that was really cool. Oh, they just missed a note. Like that's just what I do. And so yes, it's easier for me to kind of get lost in everything when I'm playing. And I love that. I love to feel that connection with the other musicians um as you're playing a song, and it just kind of, you get into that pocket and it feels like everything's flowing and everything's good. Of course, like I've had those moments with musicians too where like the drummer's playing I don't know what, and so I'm over here like listening to every missed note, and so I try not to go there when I'm playing. Like I try to just focus, but it's very difficult for me because I do hear everything that's happening, sort of. So yeah, I would say it's easier for me to just get into losing myself into the music when I'm playing versus watching, because again, I analyze everything. And I think that part of you wants, like that part of me, that performer part of me wants to be up there. Like I want to be part of it, and not necessarily like hey, I'm here too, but just there's like a feeling of, I don't know, like just home when it comes to it. And I think you want that as a musician. Like you crave that so much.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, what is it about being a musician that you like so much? Like, what have you learned from your experience?
I think it allows me to tap into a part of I'm a very shy person. Like just overall, I'm a very shy person, always have been. And with music, I've always been able to kind of tap into this other part of myself that I can just be me and it's okay. And especially with songwriting, growing up, there was a lot of things I felt like I couldn't say, but I could when I was writing a song. I could go home and I could write, a song to my bullies or whatever and say whatever I wanted to say. And it was okay and it was safe. And so for me, music has always been that safety. It's always been that safe haven of I'm okay. They know me here. Everything's good here.
So how did you discover, like, what was your first time when you discovered your genre? Or do you have a music genre? Like,
Mm.
do you like all types of genres?
I do like all types of genres, and I think that there's a lot to be learned from other styles of music. My primary genre beyond contemporary Christian, because I still feel like I am a worship contemporary Christian artist. My primary is country. And a lot of that has to do with I grew up listening to country. Country music was something that my grandparents and I shared, and I was with them a lot. I was always at their house. And my grandmother, especially, was a huge Reba fan. She was a huge, like, always watching CMT and TNN and all that stuff. And so we would sit there and watch music videos for hours. And, she would have Conway Twitty on or Dolly Parton, like, records and stuff like that. And so that was just something that we shared. And it's something that I adored. And so I think for me, country music feels like home. It's where I learned to appreciate songwriting. It's where I learned to appreciate just people's stories and the storytelling that comes with it.
What's your song creation process? Like, for instance, you had two albums, Songbird Part 1, which was last summer, and
Yeah.
Songbird Part 2, which was just this summer. How do you start? How did you start building that album together and just, there's my songs?
Honestly, every project's different. I will say that I think early on, and especially Playing with Fire was a little bit different because I had some of those songs from years of just kind of putting them on a shelf and wanting to release them, but also being too afraid to release them. So that project was slightly different. I feel like they do go together and they tell a story, but not like Songbird. Songbird is the product of trying to work through a very hard time. Back in 2018, 2019, I was going through a lot of changes as far as career and trying to figure out what I was doing. And things weren't panning out the way I thought they were supposed to pan out.
Mm.
And I think for me, I had to have a very serious conversation with myself about what is healthy and what is not. That's where those songs came from. And so honestly, the very first song of that project was Songbird. And so from that, I kind of built around it. And the first part of that project was all about this relationship. And for me, it was actually a career of building this career and trying to, like, force myself into a box that I wasn't supposed to be in. But for me, that was very hard. And so the first part of that album was very much about that. And then the second part was realizing that it's not all your fault and realizing that you can come back and that you're stronger for having gone through it, but that you have to keep going. And so it's very much, that kind of rise from the ashes mindset. But yeah, that project really did start with Songbird, the song, and feeling very, like, trapped in the situation that I was in, feeling like my voice was getting lost in all of the chaos of it, and just wanting to rebuild from that.
So you too believe that songs should be written about personal experiences?
Yeah, I think part of it is because of Celebrate Recovery and what I've learned from that. Every other week in Celebrate Recovery, somebody will come in and give a testimony about how God has come through in their life and taken them from the ashes and brought them back, or even just where they're at in their journey of getting over addiction and trying to be in recovery. And for me, I've learned the importance of somebody's testimony and hearing it from somebody else who has been there, and maybe their story isn't exactly the same, but it still can give you power and it can give you strength and it can give you hope that, hey, they got through it, so can I. And I think that's what we're supposed to do for each other. And so for me, that's what songwriting is. It's being able to put your story to song and deliver it in such a way that when somebody listens, they realize they're not alone, that they aren't the only ones that feel this way, that other people do too. And, maybe our stories don't line up perfectly. We still can be there for each other. And honestly, that's what music was for me. Growing up, I would listen to songs and hear words and things that people said. And, I couldn't relate to some of the stories, but I still could relate to their words. And I still realized that there was a common denominator between all of us, that we all have certain needs and we all have certain feelings about things and want to feel like we belong to something.
So, how did it make you feel when you were recognized locally for your songwriting and named One to Watch by Nashville Songwriters Association a couple of years ago and then last year? What's going through your head like, oh, I've arrived, or oh, Lord, thank you very much for this opportunity? Because we have to be humble about this. Because I received an
Yeah.
award, right? So, what was going through your head
Yeah.
when they said that? One to watch.
I think for me, it's more of a, okay, good. Maybe I'm doing something right. Maybe I'm on the right path. I have never thought, hey, I've arrived. Like that, to me, that's just funny. Like to even think that, because I don't know that, depending on anything that ever happened, that I would ever feel like, yeah, I've arrived. Because I don't think it's about arriving. I think it's about the journey. I think it's about continuing to work at this and improve, and to never just kind of rest on what's happening, because it can change in an instant. And so I want to continually be working to get better at this. And so for me, that's what those awards mean. It's okay, cool. Like, I'm glad somebody heard something that sounds promising, and maybe I'm doing a little bit of something right, but let's keep going. Like, let's keep getting better at this.
That's amazing. So share with us, Jennifer, about your song
Okay.
Curious. What experience you, well, I can guess curious, just curious about God, maybe the Bible, but can you explain where Curious came from and the experience that you wrote that? Because it won Best Pop Song from the Indie Songwriting Awards last winter. Like, that's amazing.
Well, thank you. So actually, Curious is about that feeling that you get when maybe you've just met somebody for the first time, or you're getting to know somebody, and you know that you want to know more about them, but it it creates that vulnerability in you of like, okay, I don't know though. Like, yeah, I want to know you more, but I also don't want to get hurt. I don't want to walk into this and have egg on my face or whatever. So it's that constant teetering of back and forth. Like, I would like to pursue this, but I also don't want to. So yeah, it's that curiosity that just comes with liking somebody and wanting to know more about them.
So after you became curious, you wrote a song called Rock This Way. You know what that song reminds me? Rock This Way. Wasn't that Aerosmith, I think? But
Walk this way. Yeah.
that's not a cover
So what's
song though.
No, it's not. So what's funny is so many people are like, "Is this a cover of Walk This Way? Like, is this Walk This Way by Aerosmith?" No, it's not. So actually, Rock This Way, funny enough, it was kind of in my trash pile of songs, because, I was writing like this really sad, reflective album of Songbird, and Rock This Way was sort of this idea of, first off, I need at least one happy song, like one upbeat, get you out of the drudgery of life song. And two, I wanted to pay like a nod to like all of my favorite rock songs, classic rock songs, because, I love classic rock. I told you that. Like, some of my first songs I've learned to sing were classic rock. So I wanted to just kind of give nods to different songs. So there's probably, oh goodness, 20 songs or so. Like, I wanted to see how many songs I could basically kind of reference in this, and it still make logical sense in a way and tell a story.
Well, what about Third Eye Blind? You ever thought of writing a song like Third Eye Blind? Because that's a great band. Like, I like at least three of their songs.
Honestly, probably. I mean, probably I would write. I could sit down and write something. I haven't really thought about it. I think that all my music kind of pulls different genres anyway, so I'm sure there's a little bit of Third Eye Blind in there, or Oasis, or Soundgarden, like one of those. Like I'm sure it's still in there,
There
but
is. I can give you one song already.
okay.
Never let you go. Never let you go. Remember that one?
Uh, yeah, okay. I know that
It's a
song.
great song.
Yeah, yeah.
Great song.
So, and I would love to do, honestly, at some point, I'd love to do a cover project because there's some songs. I always do 500 Miles by the
Hmm.
Proclaimers. I do a slowed down version of that a lot for my shows, for my live shows. And I think that I might end up doing a cover of that one
I sang a few.
early next.
I sang a few. Why? I did several cover versions of Letters from America. That's my favorite song.
Okay.
I
Okay.
love that one by them. It's amazing. So your duet with Starz Collide with Canadian band The Whythouse. It was named Best Duet. But what do you think is the role of musicians in a music band? Like when you met Whythouse, were you like, don't like the drummer, I don't like the. So what was your attitude when they invited you? Have you heard of them before?
I had. So with the Whythouse, it's a little bit different because the main guy is Chris. And that's honestly, we wrote together. That's who wrote the song. Like me and him sat down and wrote that. So he was the one that approached me about it, and he already had the chorus and basically wanted me to then come in and write the verses from my point of view. And it was a very easy write, very easy to work with, all that kind of stuff. And so with the Whythouse, he has other guys that come in and record. So it's a little bit different dynamic than like a normal, I guess, rock band, because it's more of like a urban collective project in a way. But no, I mean, I think there's something to learn from everybody you work with, and so I've always kind of welcomed that, even if I don't necessarily see eye to eye with somebody or their point of view. Like I feel like there's something to be learned, even if it's like I'm never going to do that again. So, but it was great working with Chris. He's a cool dude, and it was probably the easiest write I've ever done because I wrote my parts and sang it and sent it to him, and he was like, "Yep, this is great." And I'm like, "Okay, but wait." Like, because I'm that person that constantly, I'm a perfectionist. So I'm constantly like, well, what about this? Like, let's fix this. Let's do this. So yeah, he's very easy to work with and very much like he's got his vision, and that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. Like, first you release a song, then you get another song called Curious, and then you're finalist for 5 International Singer-Songwriter Awards, a Josie Award for Female Music Video of the Year, and a Carolina Music Award for Country Female Vocalist of the Year.
Hmm.
All that in like 2 years. And already 2023 comes around, and then you win Catfish, a World Songwriting Award for Best Modeling. How are you doing this? Like, how's your mental health? How do you deal with that when you get all these awards? I mean, I know you said thank you, Lord, for this opportunity, but how do you deal with your mental health? How does that work?
I think for me, so for me it's about balance, and that's one thing that I struggle with because I'm a workaholic. I want to go 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 until I get sick and can't go go go. So that's definitely something that I have to keep in check. And luckily, like my husband's a counselor, so he's very good with balance and trying to keep me balanced and logical with my thoughts. I think for me, I look at it as okay, great. Like I'm glad I'm glad somebody's appreciated this, and thank God that somebody appreciated it. But I'm constantly continuing to work. and I want to get better at this. And while I am very grateful for every award, I think for me it's more of a reminder to keep going, and it's more of a reminder too that like sometimes you do feel pressure that hey, like you've gotten this and this, like you've got to keep this momentum up. And so that's one thing that I have to keep in mind too, of like you're gonna go through ebbs and flows, like you're gonna have those mountaintop moments, and then you're gonna have those valleys. And I've really tried to embrace the valley sections of life, because to me that's where you learn more, that's where you draw closer to God, that's where you learn more about yourself and the true meaning behind things. Because while accolades and awards are great, and it's like hopefully it helps you to think somehow you're doing something right, it's also not reality all the time. Like it's one day, it's one decision, it's one person's opinion, or few people's opinion. And so you have to keep that in mind, that just because you are nominated and don't get it isn't a reflection on everything that you've done. Or when you aren't nominated at all, it's not a reflection on what you have or haven't done. And so I've really had to kind of change that mindset over the past couple of years, of just be proud of what you're doing. Be proud of how far you've come in general with, going out and playing shows and being consistent with what you're doing. And let that be more of where I get my, I guess, satisfaction from.
Well, you have a true eye for perfection, a true eye for detail as well. But I'm wondering, like that song Catfish, that's based on experience, and
Yeah.
I know what catfish means. Is that like a relationship? You met the guy for the first time and it wasn't a guy or something?
So actually that song, it's completely fictional. That one is fictional. I will say that.
Sure it
But
was. Just kidding.
from the standpoint of, so I wrote that. I think the show Catfish that was on MTV, I think it was already like gone, but people, of course, were using catfish all the time, and just everyday life and slang. But I grew up fishing, and so I've always sort of like laughed at the idea of catfish, because a catfish will make its little noises to confuse, fishermen and prey and all that, or not prey, but predators and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just always been like this concept in my head of like, okay, but what if we just used all fishing terms and related it back to this? And so yeah, that was a fun song to write. Again, that was in the trash pile, like that was in the pile of like, I don't know. And my producer heard that and he was like, no, we need to do something with this one. Like, this is a good song, it's clever, like you need to do something with it. And I'm like, okay. So I trust him to kind of give me that nudge when I need that nudge.
We talk about using fishing terms. I mean, I bet you I'm not the only one to ask you about catfish. And I'll tell you one thing: if you wrote a song called Hook, Line, and Sinker, definitely people were going to be asking you, "What is that all about?"
Yeah.
What is your favorite instrument to play?
Honestly, and this is probably going to be surprising, probably piano. Um, I love sitting down and writing on a piano, because I hear things more complete than with a guitar. Like, I obviously, like, guitar's like my hand, and so like I'm used to a guitar, but with piano it's still like there's so many different things you can do with it. And just when I start writing with the piano, I can actually hear everything, like where everything else should kind of come in and fall. And so I love that. I love creating with that.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on all these accolades. That's amazing. For up and coming musicians, they walk up to you and say, um, Mrs. Miller or no, Mrs. Alvarado or Jennifer, I want to be a musician. I want to do what you do. What do I do first? How do I get into the industry? What's your advice?
I would say number one, keep going because you're going to get a lot of closed doors and you're going to get people that criticize you for no reason whatsoever, really. And so I think for me, what kept me kind of settled for so long and not pursuing this the way I wanted to and the way I felt like I was supposed to was my own like self criticism and then other people saying things. And so me thinking, oh, well, I don't want to fail. So like just don't be afraid to fail because you're going to fall flat on your face and that's okay. You get tougher and you get up and you dust yourself off and you keep going. So I think that would be number one. And I think number two is just be willing to learn. Like don't walk into a room and think you're the best because I can guarantee you there's somebody better in there. And even if there isn't, like all you got to do is switch rooms and there's still going to be somebody better. So I think that that's the biggest thing is keep a humble spirit about yourself because people want to work with somebody like that. And I just think that there's so much to be learned and so many avenues that can be taken that you don't have to do it like everybody else does it. You're not supposed to. That's not your journey. But you need to be humble with it and you need to be willing to get advice and but also know like who's trying to help you and who's not. So take it with a grain of salt, a lot of stuff, but be willing to hear their words.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Jennifer. Do you think it would have been better for you as a musician? Like, what do you think has social media has changed the landscape for musicians and their careers? Do you think it would have been better if you came out in the 80s or the 90s?
I mean, I think it would have been different. I don't know that I'm very much about, there's a reason. There's a reason for the timing. There's a reason for all of that. I needed to go through things. I needed to learn my own voice and how to stand up for myself and all of that. So I think that there's a reason for all of it. I think that as a musician, it's a lot easier in a way to get your music out there now with social media and with just being able to distribute things at the touch of a button and all of that. The difference is everybody can do it too. And so there's such an influx of music and artists. And so you've got to try to not get lost in all that because it's easy to get covered up and lost in it. I think that there is a return even in country music because the landscape of country music has changed over the years too. I think that there is a return to singer songwriters and I'm already seeing that shift happen. I think it just takes time because I think for so long it kind of went on to this like pop circuit of let's mass produce songs and everything kind of sounds the same and everything's cookie cutter and this is how you write a song and if you deviate from that then it gets thrown out. But I don't think that that's necessarily how it's going to stay forever. I think everything changes and I think again, I think there's a reason why I was created and born and you know what I mean? Like why I wasn't in the 90s. I love the 90s and my music definitely kind of pays homage to some of that 90s sound and feel. But I think again, like things change and I think that there's a place for all of it.
So I take it your songs like Curious and Starz Collide, did you record them with actual real live bands in the studio?
I think for Starz Collide, there's a lot of programming that was done on that one by Chris. There is live musicians on that as well though. For all of my stuff, Sometimes we have samples that we use, but for the most part, no. Like it's all band. It's a lot. Like not everybody in the studio at the same time, but we build live instruments. So like drums are real, and there might be a percussion track or something like that in one of the songs, but usually we still have live drummer, that kind of stuff. Even with vocals, as far as like harmonies and stuff like that, and have it all done myself, or bring like a guy in to do a low harmony or something like that. It's important for me, and especially with the music I'm working on now, I want it real. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like, I want to be able to, it's always been important for me to be able to go sit down with my guitar and play these songs and not have to have a computer or whatever else to make it sound right. Um, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. But for me personally, there's just always been a thing. And I think part of it is my grandfather was a musician. And so I grew up watching him play.
Mm,
And he played several instruments,
wow.
and he was very much like he played live on the radio. And so there wasn't like, there wasn't this, record and stop. Like it was live. Like that's what you do. And
Wow.
so I've always wanted it to sound as good live as it does, or better as it does on a recording. And I think that that's one thing, like Reba McEntire, for example, that's always been one of my things that impressed me the most about her was you would go to her concert, and yeah, it sounded like the record, but she sounded like herself. Like it wasn't fake. And so that's always been very important to me. I want somebody's experience with me to be as real as it possibly can be.
You said your grandfather was on the radio. What's his name so I can look him up?
Oh, it was local radio.
Wow.
It was local, yeah. It was local radio in Hickory, North Carolina. So,
That's pretty awesome.
yeah.
What do you want to do with your music in the future? Like, would you consider AI or have them clone your voice? Or what do you think of AI?
Uh,
It's really like, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the new, and it's actually the very last Beatles song called Now and Then. And what they did is they
mhm.
had actually George Harrison, obviously he passed away 20 years ago, but they had him
Yeah.
playing the guitar in the studio because when he was around and John Lennon was around, they were working on the song, but never were able to get it out until like a month ago.
Yeah.
And so they used
Yeah.
AI. And this is the
To
only time I
create.
think AI can be used for a good thing in music. It's that they used AI to clean up John Lennon's vocals. And now you have this great song
Right.
called Now and Then.
And that's what I was going to say. I think if it's used correctly, great. If it's used for something like that, where, you want to finish what somebody started, to finish that legacy or whatever it is. Okay, I can get behind that. I think with anything technology related, it can very quickly be used the wrong way if put in the wrong hands. And it can be destructive if put in the wrong hands. And so I think that that's what I'm concerned about, because I do believe that with songwriting, for example, I think that there's always going to be something that chat GBT or AI cannot replicate. And that's being able to sit in a room with other people and tell your life story and be able to capture that in such a way that it makes people feel something. Like AI can throw words in there, and it can sound great, but I still don't think it's going to have the same effect as putting, people together to tell their story.
I can tell you what I've seen. I was on Instagram or TikTok at one point, and they had like an image of Jesus, and they used um, AI to make him speak Bible scripture. I'm like, oh my goodness. Don't tell me
No.
the Antichrist isn't going to be an AI, is it? And it does say in the Bible about the image of the beast, but I don't think AI has anything to do with it. But I'm going to tell you one thing. So I heard them use AI to produce a song by Amy Winehouse. It sounds like her and it sounds like her music, but it's not hers, an AI. And here's one that made me laugh. It's not the Now and Then by Beatles. I love that one, how they used AI, but it's the one where
Okay.
they took Johnny Cash's voice. And I don't know if you're familiar with the 80s tune by Aqua called Barbie Girl, when she says, "You can brush my hair, you can
I
dress me."
saw that. Yeah.
So they had Johnny Cash singing it, and I'm like, "Oh, really? You can brush my hair and dress me?" I'm like, "No, I'm turning it off." So if your manager or producer, whatever, showed up and said, "Okay,
Mhm.
Jennifer, we're gonna write a song," you're going, "Yes, yes," and it's gonna be a great song, yeah, and we're gonna use AI, and you're gonna be doing a duet with David Bowie. What would your reaction be?
No. What's funny is I actually went to I guess it was a songwriter type retreat thing back in February, and the guy that had it, he's really big in tech, and so it was right when like Chat GBT and that kind of stuff was really hitting, and we actually wrote some songs using Chat GBT. Like we like put a song in and it generated and like changed the mood of it or whatever, and it like regenerated the words.
Wow.
And I mean, it had flaws. Like that's all I can say. Like it was flawed. It was not great. It was okay. Some of it was fine, but and it was funny and it was fun to do that. But as far as then taking that and putting that out there for the world to consume, no. I just no. I think that part of music and being a creative is that satisfaction that you get from putting your soul on a page and or on a record and having somebody hear it. And for me, if it's artificially created, I, I just don't see any satisfaction in that.
Jennifer's songs will be linked down below and videos for Filthy Water, which is an interesting and great song. It probably has to do with the environment, but I loved it. Loved the song. Jennifer, where else can you be found?
So I would say check out my website first, jenniferalvarado.com. Social media, all those things are Jennifer Alvarado Music. But yeah, I'm on Spotify, Reverb Nation, Bandcamp, pretty much any streaming platform you can think of, I'm there. So
SoundCloud as
Jennifer
well?
Alvarado. Yes. Yep, I am.
Excellent. And I believe I followed you on your Facebook page as well.
Awesome.
So that was good. And yeah, so I appreciate everything. So everyone, we're going to end the stream and thank you for tuning in.
No
Okay,
problem.
everyone. Jennifer Alvarado and Chris Robert out.
One night becomes three every time you talk to me. Light a match and watch it burn. Soon the table's gonna turn. You think you are the man, talking with your dirty hands, but karma will make it right. The things you took away in spite. Ooh, don't you know? Ooh, the truth is gonna show. One day soon they're gonna see exactly